This is Brick School Class 3. Today we're going to be talking about units and measurements. I hope you're ready to have fun today, Billy. You know what this is? That's a tape measure. That's right. And if you just yelled it out at your screen, I don't think you understand how YouTube works. So why am I showing you a tape measure? Well, unless you're in the United States of America, the rest of the world has a tape measure that looks a little something like this. And as you can see, there's more than one unit of measurement on there. Why? Because over time, we've developed a better solution metric. Thankfully, the web is a whole lot like that. Back in the day, all we had were pixels, and pixels sucked. I mean, they're not bad. They just, we at the time, we literally had like one size monitor. If you had a 17-inch, maybe a 19 if you're rich, but you know what I'm saying. It wasn't endless types of screens and mobile devices and folding phones and all that. So all you had to worry about was pixels, but that's not the case today. So we're going to take a quick look at measurement because as we get started on this course, it's important that you understand which measurement you should be using where. Now, I'm not going to lie, it's kind of a rabbit hole, and you can get into worrying about these little nitty gritty screw it. I'm going to show you like the 3 or 4 that you actually need. And honestly, I think I use 3. So this isn't rocket science, you know? Hey, this is the YouTube version of this class. This class is available commercial free and with additional content in bricksschool.com. Totally free to join up. Link is in the description. So you should probably do that instead of watching the YouTube versions. Yesterday, I showed you frameworks, and in the framework, I explained how you've got a root font size. Now you can either be 62 or 100%. And, here on Styler, you can put your mouse over and it explains that 62.5 is going to make 1 rem equal 10 pixels. And this has been talked about on dozens of other videos, so I'm not going to really dwell here. The point is, though, I wanted you to see where that 62.5 actually sits. Now, funny enough, Brickstyler website is not built using Brickstyler because I couldn't, because I was building Brickstyler. It was this vicious little circle. But if I look at the code, and this is true on any brick site, go open your own brick site. If I go up to the HTML tag and I come down here and I just say HTML so I can sort that out. Here you can see the font size is set at 62.5. And like I said in my last video, Bricks does this by default. So why the hell are we talking about it again? Well, the big reason is we want to talk about relative measurements, okay? Pixels are a set thing. They're little blocks of color, and you're counting how many pixels. Well, that isn't the way that we do it nowadays, because a pixel doesn't always mean a pixel now. You might have a high-end MacBook that has like pixel quadrupling or whatever, you know what I'm saying, where it's scaled down and all that. So we needed a better way to have these relative measurements, okay? Now, of course, the first and foremost relative measurement that kind of comes to mind is percentage, okay? 100% of your width, 50% of your width. This one I think everybody can wrap their heads around very quickly. We still use percentages. I use them all the time. They're great. But I never use pixels. And let's look at why. There are 2 main sizings that I use. Rem and M. And I'm not going to go into real long detail about this. I'm just going to show you what the difference is because it's something that makes it's very easy to show. Okay, So let's go here. I've built this wonderful temp page, and I actually left it. I backed it up because, we're all new using 2.0, right? I'm effing loving it. I'm like McDonald's with Tourette's. I love this shit because watch what I'm able to do. Okay, so I've got these three boxes. One, they've all just got a text in them, and the text that is written is what they're set at. So this here is 3rem, this here is 3m, and this here is 30 pixels. But I wanted to, center these three, and I was like, I'm not going to make a class, blah, blah, blah. Check this out. I click one of the boxes, I hold down Control, I click the other two boxes so that they're all selected. I go and center align them. How great is that? Now, I know that had nothing to do with this lesson, but just pointing out little tips and tricks that save a ton of time. And that's one of them. So, by the way, I only wanted to select the divs, but I could have selected the top one, hold down Shift, and it would do the same thing. So, it's just like selecting text. If you're good at selecting text, you could do the same things. So here's the point. Why, if on this site 1rem is equal to 10 pixels, why is this size and this size exactly the same, which they should be because this is 30 pixels. But if you notice this 3m, it's much bigger. In fact, if you're kind of catching on here, the big difference is that 62.5% to 100%. See, rem is basing the M size. M was a unit of measurement for the shape, the size of the letter M back in typesetting days. So rem is the relative, it's relative to the root, so that if your root is set at 62.5, it's going to make a rem worth 10 pixels, right? The thing is, with an M, it is not relative to the root, it's relative to the parent. So in other words, in this box, this M here is relative to this box. It's the child of this box. So therefore, it's defaulting to 100%. So in this case, if I select this parent and I set the font size to 10 pixels, bloody hell. All right, look what's happened. All of a sudden, they're all the same. You see, because this got its value relative to this. And when it's not stated what the actual font size is, it defaults to 100%. Or I should say 100% being 16 pixels. You get where I'm going with this. So why then why don't we just always use rem? Because the great thing is, doesn't matter that I could take this here, okay, and on this box, I could stick it there. Look. I'll stick 5 on there, 15, whatever, 5, okay? It didn't change the rem. You understand? And you probably don't quite understand yet, but you will in just a second. See, rem is pretty much what you normally always want to use. But there's one thing where M wins, and that's locally scoped. So for instance, let's take this and we'll get 3 of these. And on the first one, we'll leave it. Actually, let's make this 6. And the second one, we'll leave it at 3. And this here, we will make 1. Actually, we'll make it 1.6, okay? Now, all of these sizes are relative to the parent, not to the root of the document, which means if you're building a component where you want it locally scoped, see, let's say this was a button and I wanted my font sizes to be relative to each other, but I want the entire button to be large or small. Well, watch what happens. Instead of setting it at 10 pixels, if I go 5 pixels, boom, all three of those just got half the size. You see what I mean? And obviously vice versa. If I go 15 pixels, they're relative to each other because they're relative to the parent division. And that's the power of M, okay? So that's pretty much all I need to tell you right there. Use REM for 99% of stuff. M if you need locally scoped. I'm slightly oversimplifying because I'm trying to fast track learning. You know, we're still at the beginning of the course, so I'm not going to get into every single little detail right now. So there you go. You got REM, you got M. Is that all you need to know? Not quite. Here's another one you're going to want to know. Let me just go ahead and I'll just delete this whole thing. That is Control Delete. I selected an element and I pressed Control Delete. Okay. I'm mentioning this so that when people see things, they'll know what the hell I was doing. I'm going to throw in some basic text. And in this basic text, I am going to put some real exciting lorem ipsum. Okay, so we got a bunch of text in there. Now, we've got REM. REM is setting our font size. By the way, REM is also setting our padding and all that because it's all relative to the same element, which is that HTML setting, right? So we have one truth, all relative to that. But now we want to say, you know, this text size, we want it maybe 70%. And it's 70% of this container. I don't think this is rocket science, so I'm barely going to touch on this. Everybody knows that. But there's a new one. And, well, relatively speaking, it's new. If you've been developing for 20 years, it's new. You like it. And that is character. Let's say I want to have 59 characters. And literally what it's doing, now, this isn't the greatest example. I mean, typically you would have this more for a smaller thing. Let me just quickly center this. And we'll take this typography, we'll center that also. So now you want to control how many characters are on a line because, you know, 100% width is very hard for people to read doing this. They hate it. They hate it. So don't do it. Okay. Character width is, I think it's like one of my fave. It's like I love it, you know, and it's really great because you can automatically break the words. For instance, if I go down one character, you see that word on that front line, it didn't break. It'll pretty it up, you know? So, and here's another thing. I don't know if you know this, but you could put your mouse in or your cursor, I should say, in the box and just up and down arrow. So sometimes I'll do this. I'll sit here and I'll go, and I'm not even looking at the number because I really don't give a crap. And I'm going, yeah, right about there. Okay. And then I look and I go, oh, it's 64 characters. Because how the hell would I know it was 64 characters? Right? So now that sets your width. But watch what happens when we go in and let's change the actual font size. Now I'm using Styler's font sizing, but same difference. Now the box got quite a bit bigger because each character just got bigger. Same amount of characters on a line though. You understand what I'm saying? Had I said this was 70%, doesn't really matter how big the words got. In fact, let's go ahead and I'll show you that. Let's say we set this at 70%. Well, that's going to kind of willy-nilly, it's changing now as to how many characters. And if I went, let's say I go down, it's changing the character count, which could very much change the layout of your wording. So by using, whatever, I think at this point we wanted 64 characters, you can balance that out and say, okay, well, maybe I want my first line to end right here. This is one time Laura Mipsum probably wasn't the best choice. It would have been nice to have words we could read. But if we wanted that cutoff to be there, well, we could guess that's probably about 45 characters, and boom, there you go. Now it's just a matter of, well, we set our typography, and here you just wheel down and go to, I don't know, text M. But see how it doesn't matter which text size I take. I'm going to take 2, or right now I'm at M, and the last word is this Andy pissing whatever. And if I go to 2XL, still last word is Andy pissing. I'm sure that's not how that was pronounced, but I might have to cut that out. So you get the idea. Characters are a hell of a lot more flexible than a percentage. Both have their usages, though, obviously. But I just wanted you to see that with just rem, M, which again, we barely use. I honestly, I'd never use it. I get why you would use it. I just personally don't build that way. I suppose if you had a megalithic site that just huge and you had classes up the wazoo, I guess then, sure. If you have tons of components, sure, do it. So we're done with measurements, right? Not quite. There is one more, well, actually 2 more that I want to touch on. And they're kind of like percentage, but not really. Here's why. So we had said this here could be set in a percentage, and let's do that. We'll do 70%. And I tell you what, let me just change the background color here so that you can kind of see what I'm talking about. And in fact, on this container, we will set a border real fast. Okay, we'll set a border real fast just so that you can see it. In fact, let's go 3 so you can really see it. Okay, and boom, our red box is taking up 70% of this box. Okay, makes sense? So the other sizing is a relative sizing, and this is another one, just like character, that I love this one. Instead of 70%, you could say 70 view width or 70 VW. Now, you may notice that is more than 70% of this box, because it's not 70 VP, as in, the view, well, I guess that would be viewport, but it's not the parent that it's setting it off of. The percentage is basing it off the parent, just like with the rem thing. With VW, view width, it's 70% of your viewport. So if you're on a phone, here, we'll change this up. This box is taking up 70% of the width of the box. Or of the viewport, I should say, not the box. Now you can see how this could be super powerful, and it gives you true responsiveness, whereas using a percentage doesn't really, because that box may be quite wide on a big screen, but when it becomes small and now you're only showing 70% of that, you get where I'm going? So view width is super great to use. There's another one, and that's view height. And I'm betting that you can guess what the thing is. It is 7, or well, whatever you want it to be, but in the min height here, let's go 70 VH. Just like VW, view width, VH, view height. Now, you noticed how I put that in the min height. That's because you almost never want to set your height. You just don't. It screws things up, and this video is already too long for me to go into why. Just try and avoid it. I typically only use this view height thing on like a hero section, something that's loading, maybe a single, I think my login page on most of my sites uses it, so that you're taking up the whole page. So that's all right. But you definitely don't want to go in and start setting view heights on things, or I should say any heights on anything. But view height is a very powerful thing, but with power comes responsibility. Use it wisely, Billy. Don't just stick it all over willy-nilly style, or trust me, you're going to be pulling your bloody hair out very quickly. Okay, class, that's it for the day. Wanted to touch base on what the main sizings you should be using are, and I think you pretty much have figured out. We're going to be using a lot of rem. We may use rem mostly, okay? And then percentages, view width, view height, character width. That's it, man. Like you understand those, and it's so much better than chasing down every rabbit hole of these nano specific things that really just bog your brain. You throughout the rest of the course, I can just assume that you watch this video like a champ you are, and I'm not going to cover every time what the hell a rem is. And okay, all right, we'll see you tomorrow, and hope you had fun with this lesson. Oh, hey, like, subscribe, and all that.